The most feared street gangs of old New York weren't run by brutal men with knives and pistols. They were run by wealthy, organized matriarchs who turned human abduction into a corporate science. In the late 19th century, a network of syndicates, known clinically as grabber gangs, hunted the city's vulnerable immigrant girls in broad daylight. At the top of this empire sat two rival rulers, Light Lizzie and Hester, Jane the Grabber, Haskins. But they didn't hide from the law. The legal system actively protected them. How does an entire kidnapping syndicate operate with total impunity? Because the courts found it more profitable to protect the bosses than to protect the citizens. In the next few minutes, you'll see how a broken justice system weaponized the law against the victims, and why a massive constitutional crisis was required to finally tear down New York's darkest trade. If you enjoy true cases where the law becomes the real mystery, subscribe, because these historical files only get stranger. To understand how these women built an empire, you have to look at New York City in the 1870s. The Gilded Age was exploding with massive wealth, but beneath the surface lay a desperate humanitarian crisis. Tens of thousands of young immigrant girls were pouring off ships every single week, completely alone, unable to speak English, and hunting for any kind of honest work just to survive. This extreme vulnerability created a booming market. In the dark districts of the Bowery and Five Points, the underworld realized that classic crimes like bank robberies and street muggings were dangerous and erratic. Human trafficking, however, was highly predictable, immensely lucrative, and virtually ignored by the authorities. But running this specific trade required a veneer of trust that brutal male street thugs simply couldn't provide. A terrified, lost teenager on a train platform would run away from a scarred gangster, but she would willingly walk right into the arms of a well-dressed, respectable-looking maternal figure who promised her a safe place to sleep and a job as a domestic servant. This psychological trap became the foundation of the grabber gangs. Light Lizzie and Jane, the grabber, weren't just street criminals. They were executive operators who understood that the easiest way to bypass a victim's defenses was to weaponize the illusion of safety. The actual mechanics of the grabber gangs operated like a clinical assembly line. These syndicates did not rely on random, chaotic kidnappings in dark alleys. They used a highly sophisticated system of deception disguised as legitimate commerce. Lizzie and Jane established fraudulent employment agencies and placed fake advertisements in local newspapers, promising high wages for young women willing to work as cooks, maids, or seamstresses. When a girl walked through their doors looking for an honest living, the trap snapped shut. The syndicates employed specialized scouts, known as procurers, who patrolled train stations, ferry docks, and immigrant landing depots. These scouts would identify girls who looked lost, detached from family, or utterly desperate. They would offer them immediate shelter, lead them into heavily fortified buildings in the Tenderloin or Bowery districts, and strip them of their paperwork, civilian clothes, and money. Once inside, the victims were held captive through a combination of physical confinement and manufactured debt. The gang bosses would charge the girls astronomical, fraudulent fees for their meager food, forced housing, and the very clothes on their backs. Under the law of the era, failing to pay these debts meant a person could be legally detained or arrested. The enterprise was entirely systemic, designed to turn a human being into a permanent financial asset. When early anti-vice reform societies and brave journalists began looking into these missing girls, they expected to find a hidden underworld operating deep in the shadows. Instead, they discovered something far more disturbing. The grabber gangs weren't hiding at all. Their fortified headquarters were operating right in the open, often just blocks away from municipal buildings. Every time a reform group gathered evidence, pinpointed a location, and demanded a raid, the investigation would mysteriously stall. Files would vanish from precinct desks. Raids would be delayed by hours, giving Lizzie and Jane ample time to move their victims through hidden tunnels or secret back exits. The reformers quickly realized they weren't just fighting an underworld gang. They were fighting the New York Police Department itself. During this era, local precinct captains had to buy their positions with massive cash bribes paid to political bosses. To make that money back, the police ran a highly organized protection racket. The grabber gangs paid regular, predictable tribute directly to the local police captains. In exchange, the police didn't just ignore the crimes. They acted as the syndicate's private security force. If a victim managed to escape into the street and scream for help, the responding officer wouldn't arrest the kidnapper. The officer would arrest the terrified girl, dragging her back into the system under the guise of law enforcement. This is where we uncover the true legal mystery of the Gilded Age. The architecture of the law itself was built to shield the abuser. Under the 19th-century penal code, prosecuting a procurer required the direct, uncorroborated testimony of the victim. But the legal system had created a brilliant, devastating loophole. The moment a girl was trapped inside one of these syndicates, she was legally classified by the state as a participant in vice. In the eyes of the courts, this stripped her of her legal standing. If a victim managed to get in front of a magistrate, the syndicate's expensive lawyers would simply argue that the witness was a woman of loose morals whose word could not be trusted against a wealthy, property-owning business operator like Lizzie or Jane. The courts routinely accepted this defense. The law treated the exploited women as the primary criminals, prosecuting them for vagrancy or public indecency, while completely insulating the bosses who financed and orchestrated the entire network. By twisting the concept of witness credibility, the justice system effectively created an invisible shield around organized crime. The courts were protecting the status quo because the status quo was filling the pockets of judges, politicians, and police captains alike. The law wasn't failing by accident. It was working exactly as it was designed to. The breaking point didn't happen during a standard criminal trial. It happened when frustrated reformers realized they couldn't win inside a corrupt local courtroom. Instead of trying to convict individual gang members under broken laws, they changed their strategy entirely. They targeted the money. In the 1890s, the New York State Senate launched a massive, televised-style public inquiry known as the Lexo Committee. They bypassed the local magistrates entirely, creating an independent legislative forum where the public could see the evidence directly. Reformers brought forward a flood of witnesses, not just the victims, but the ledger books of the syndicates themselves. For the first time in Manhattan history, prosecutors put bank records and police accounting sheets side by side on a public courtroom table. They showed that the thousands of dollars flowing into the pockets of high-ranking police captains matched the exact operating schedules of the grabber gangs. This completely shifted the legal battlefield. The defense lawyers could no longer attack the morality of a victim to dismiss the case, because they were now staring at cold, objective financial data. The committee proved to the public that the law wasn't being broken by the syndicates. It was being rented by them. But the real twist in this story isn't that Red Light Lizzie or Jane the Grabber were finally locked away in a dramatic courtroom showdown. In fact, many of the Underworld's highest-ranking bosses used their deep political connections to slip through the dragnet, fleeing the city or tying up their cases in appeals until the public outrage died down. The true climax was a complete institutional collapse. The Lexo Committee's findings didn't just expose a few bad apples. They proved that the entire New York City Police Department was legally indistinguishable from the criminal syndicates it was supposed to hunt. The public revelation that police captains were getting rich off the systematic abduction of young women caused such immense fury that it completely shattered Tammany Hall's decades-long grip on power. The citizens realized that the justice system had become a greater threat to public safety than the criminals themselves. To fix it, the state didn't just pass stricter penalties for kidnapping. They had to completely overhaul the legal rules of accountability. They stripped local precincts of their unchecked authority, established independent oversight boards, and rewritten the laws of evidence so that a victim's testimony could no longer be instantly disqualified by her social status. This dark chapter of history forces us to look at a fundamental truth about constitutional law and human rights. When we think of the justice system, we like to believe its sole purpose is to punish the guilty. But history proves that if a system is allowed to ignore due process for the most vulnerable members of society, it will eventually become a weapon used against everyone. The grabber gangs didn't survive because they were clever. They survived because the courts and the police prioritized a highly profitable status quo over basic human rights. The law protected the criminal network because the network was funding the system itself. It serves as a stark historical warning. Whenever the state is given the power to decide that certain people are beneath the protection of the law, whether due to their social standing, their legal status, or their perceived morality, true justice ceases to exist. The legal protections we enjoy today weren't created in a vacuum. They were hard-won corrections designed to prevent the system from ever becoming that dangerous again. What do you think about how this system operated? Do you think the reforms went far enough? Or do modern legal loopholes still leave the vulnerable unprotected? Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into the dark history of the law.